Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live language facilitation Q&A session, or if you're watching on the replay, the Q&A session. My name is Marcy Melzer, and I am an intuitive speech and language pathologist and language facilitation consultant, and I help parents teach their late talking children how to use natural spoken language so that they can share all of their wisdom with the world. And every week I come on my Facebook page at 2 p.m. Eastern Time to do live Q&A with parents. So if you are joining me today, please go ahead and post your question in the comments. And as usual, while I'm waiting for the comments to come in, I want to do a little discussion today. And the topic that I have chosen is about sensory behaviors. I'm going to call them sensory behaviors because very often, in fact, one of the parents who's just joined my Waves of Communication Lifetime program has a child who is a late talker, and he also has some issues with eating. But one of the characteristics that his mom explained to me about him is that he has a very real aversion to things on his hands. He doesn't like them to be dirty or wet, and he also doesn't like his face to be dirty or wet. So every time he's eating, this is one of the behaviors that he has. He's wiping his mouth almost before she's even taken the spoon away or before he's done eating. He immediately has to automatically wipe his mouth after every bite. Even if he doesn't necessarily have something on his mouth, but usually when he does have something on his mouth, anytime he wipes his mouth. So what I have talked to her about and what I'm going to share with you is about if you have a child who has any kind of consistent behaviors that they do repetitively, like this little guy is wiping his mouth, other kids flap their hands, move, walk, maybe they pace back and forth. But these are the behaviors that parents notice their children doing repetitively, almost compulsively. They have to do these things, and whenever they're on their own, they're doing these things, whatever these behaviors are. And it is in the system, whenever you have a late talking child that's in a system like that, it is common for parents to be guided to work with an occupational therapist about, to get guidance about these behaviors, because in theory, the behaviors that children are doing who are maybe nonverbal are as a result, these compulsive things they're doing are as a result of some sort of sensory need. So for example, they either really like something or they really don't like something. For example, the kid, right, who has stuff all over his mouth, he doesn't like that feeling, so he has this compulsory behavior to avoid that feeling or get it off his face. The kids who wash their hands all the time, things like that. And even a person who has been, identified themselves as having OCD or some kind of obsessive behavior, that's what it is. And the thing that every parent of a late talking children or even a child who's verbal needs to understand about every behavior that you observe is that every behavior is a form of communication. It might be a self-communication or it might be an outward communication, but it is a communication. Everything we do, as humans anyway, we do, and even animals, obviously it's easier to see in animals, they're nonverbal things that they do, are communication behaviors. Why do animals always show up at the watering hole at the same place at the same time? Because, yeah, they know there's water there, but they also know that other animals are going to be there. So why do they do that behavior? Because they know where their water source is, and they know that there are other animals there that they can hunt or potentially breed with. So in humans, nonverbal humans, all the behaviors that we do are also communication. So my first recommendation for you, if you have a child who is doing lots and lots and lots of the same kind of behavior, is to understand why that behavior is happening. And potentially, because it is a communication, what could your child be trying to communicate with that behavior? Like I said, it could be a self-communication, like, I hate this, I need to make it stop. Or it could be an outward communication, like, stop doing what you're doing. Or on the positive end, I love this thing and this activity, whatever it is that I'm experiencing right now, I love it so much I can't even control myself and I don't have a way to communicate it. So the child might flap their hands at that stage, right? A child who is trying to avoid something might wipe their mouth every time. But here's what you have to be careful about and watch to see the difference between if that is a sensory behavior, like they have to have that input, or if potentially the child is communicating a message to the world around them, and they don't look like they're communicating because it's a behavior that seems to be very self-absorbed, like I'm wiping my mouth. But in this particular case, that child very likely could be wiping his mouth because he has a food aversion and his mom's been trying to feed him. And he doesn't like it. And so he's trying to use it as a time grabber. You know, kids who have reflux, they'll do this too. They avoid eating because someone else is trying to get them to do something like eat food when they're not ready. And they'll avoid that. So watch in your child to see if you have if there's anything that they're doing compulsively and what they're trying to communicate by that. And if it is a sensory behavior, that communication is, this feels good, or this feels bad, or this feels happy, this makes me anxious, this makes me, because many times those sensory behaviors, when someone is like squeezing something or flapping or rocking or things like that, are behaviors children do to communicate their feelings. It's not about, remember we talk about feeling sensory as being a sensory, like I hate how it feels on my physical skin, I hate how it smells, like the 5 senses that you usually do. But think about the 6th sense too, that comfort, that enjoyable, need to exist in life. That's an important thing. If your child is feeling calm and relaxed and easy to learn from you or even participate in the activity, and you're trying to help them do it or force them to do it, even though you think you're trying to make it fun and talk them into do it by tricking them. Anytime you try to trick a child into do something, it doesn't look like forcing them to actually put the food in there, but by like having them watch a device and you sneaking food in their mouth, that still is technically force feeding. So anything you ask your child to do, to sit and do whatever, they should willingly be wanting to participate in that activity. And if they are not, whatever behavior you see is their way to communicate that they don't want to do that thing. So, long story short, this little discussion about sensory behaviors, if you've been told that your child must do this thing because they have to have that feeling, that is very different necessarily than the communication of they're doing that thing to avoid you. And the only way to know which one it is by putting yourself in your child's shoes and looking at the whole situation. So put yourself in your child's shoes. Would your child enjoy is your child visibly, because you can see how they feel, right? If they are visibly anxious, they have that anxiety face, like I don't want her to feed me again, and you're trying to feed them, then your child's trying to communicate with you and you're ignoring them. That, because their nonverbal communication of their facial expression is their way to say, I don't want you to feed me anymore. And if you, as an adult, someone said, I just made this great meal, why don't you try it? And it has not something that you're allergic to, but something that you can't stand, like maybe a texture. I just made this wonderful mushroom soup and you can't stand mushrooms. A lot of people don't like mushrooms. And you're trying to get your child to eat something because you think they need to eat it, but they are literally feeling disgusted by that thing you're trying to put in their mouth. And you want them to be a good child and a blind comply with your demands because you're their mom and this is what you should eat your broccoli, I'm going to make you eat your broccoli, your child's going to give you behavior if they're nonverbal, if they're late talking, even if they have limited verbal, if they're using nouns, they're going to give you behavior to let you know how they feel. And that behavior could be subtle. It doesn't have to be massive. If someone said, I had this mushroom soup and you were opposed to mushrooms and I tried to feed it to you, you would be kind and say, no, thank you. I don't care for mushrooms. But your late talking child potentially doesn't have the ability to communicate that. So they're going to push the thing away or get up and leave the table. Like I tell everybody, I just had this discussion today in my community meeting. There are only two reasons that people want to do anything from go to bed to eat to whatever. You have to really want to do that activity or you have to really enjoy the company that you're with. Right? Because you'll endure something that you really don't like, a meal of mushroom soup, and just pick at the mushroom soup, and you'll stay at the table happily if the conversation is wonderful, or somebody's talking about your favorite topic. You'll stay there and participate. You won't eat, but you will stay and be with the activity, even if you aren't all in on what that activity is. Same thing if you watch a sporting game with your partner, and you're not into football, but your partner loves football, and you go to the football game and you enjoy it because you watch the people and you see the things. But if your partner forced you to go and play football or spout the stats or all that stuff, you would be like, I don't want to go to the football game with you anymore. When you let me do it my way, I'm happy to come and enjoy this activity with you. But if you force me to do it your way, I'm out. I'm just going to go, watch a movie or something instead and let you go to the game yourself. Your child doesn't have the ability to opt out or tap out of these things that they don't enjoy. And if you're trying to get them to make big changes and start to be verbal, you have to empower those things. You have to encourage them to want to share those things. And if you squash their behaviors because you think it's some sensory thing that you need to change, then that's going to be getting in the way of your language facilitation process. All right, so enough of that. Now I see a bunch of people are joining. Thank you so much for joining me. Please give this video a like if you are here today. I've got some questions rolling in, and if you have a late talking child, please post your question here. If you have been trying language facilitation, welcome to all the people who are joined my programs, my independent study, and you're here asking questions or getting ongoing tips. Even the parents who join my lifetime community, many of them listen to the replays of these Q&A sessions that I do in my group. We get a lot more in depth in there, but it really is helpful sometimes, I think, for the parents to watch the replays. So if you're watching the replay, please consider giving this a like and join me next Thursday at 2 p.m. so that you can see me next time. All right, let's see. Nicole has a question. She says, hi, Marcy. I integrated some of your pointers and ideas with my son, and it's helping so much. Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. He is starting to communicate verbally more than he was doing before. Nicole, that is amazing, and thank you so much for sharing. If you want, even now, write me a comment about what kind of stuff he was doing before and what he's doing now, so even other parents can see, like, what does that mean? My friend, Dr. Harry, who helps people talk, he says, too, parents say they're doing better, but for somebody like me, I want to know what better looks like. What is your child saying? Is your child asking you for things and they used to just drag you there? Are they starting to say single words to ask for things? Tell me that. If your child is if your child was using single words only maybe when you prompted and now you've been not prompting, it's been 4 weeks since I did that stopping the prompting challenge, I'll bet many of you are already seeing improvement like Nicole. If you've seen something like that, let me know. And then if you do ask a question, let me know what your child's doing too, because it's always helpful for me to know at what level your child is right now so that I can give you the first step. Because if you try steps that are too far ahead, then you could break down the system. It's kind of like boot camp. You don't want to get your child phased out. These are lifestyle changes like swapping your prompting. So Nicole, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'll tell you what, everybody, this works. I don't even know Nicole. She's been watching my videos. If this is the first video you're watching, go check out the other videos on my YouTube channel. There is one playlist that is entitled Get Started with Language Facilitation Here or something like that. And there are 4 or 5 videos in there that is kind of like a mini course that will help you get started. And yeah, so that's really a good advice for anybody. Erica says, okay, my son has been more verbal, but he's only speaking in script. Okay, sorry, I'm doing my glasses adjustment here. He repeats what he hears on TV. How can I help him speak normally? Okay, Erica, so when kids, this is a developmental stage that some and many children move through. It's kind of, some people call it the parroting stage, and it is a sort of a stepping stone toward natural verbal speech. At this stage, when kids are saying the words that they have memorized from TV, that is their way. Remember, all behavior is communication. So saying words about the things that you love, that communication to me means, I love this so much, I want to play it. So for example, if your child loves YouTube videos and you've turned off the YouTube video because they're taking a break from screen time, that's your late talking child's way of talking about those things that they like. So, if they really like ABCs, for example, a lot of kids love ABCs and numbers because there are many YouTube videos, or all over, not even just YouTube, just videos in general that make that number sequence. It's easy to remember for kids because it's a sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, E. Kids learn the sequence of them. Kids learn songs because they listen to these things repeatedly. They listen to them repeatedly because they enjoy them. There's something about that thing, that video, that they enjoyed. So they are in the position right now where talking for them, the purpose, the reason for their talking behavior is self-entertainment. It's not for communication unless they come to you and talk about their favorite thing. And then that communication could be a request, like if they say their favorite character name, that means turn on that video for me, or I want to watch that video, or I'm at nothing else, I'm thinking about that character right now. So my suggestion is, if you don't want to go to put on a video and honor your child's choice, which you don't have to, you can actually replace that entertainment with you talking about that thing that your child likes. Now, if it's the echolalia, true echolalia is when children say words that they have memorized, but they are using them to mean something else. So if your child says, oh, MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and they say it just like that, that would be an echolalic way to request that video. Now, a step ahead of that is when your child says, oh, McDonald, to have you to do the video, because they have had to translate, oh, McDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, whatever they heard on that video, in the same tone, in the same whatever, into their own speech. So this is how you know where your child is along that stage. If their speech sounds exactly like the thing that they heard, same intonation, all the same stuff that they heard on those videos, then it's very likely echolalic or entertainment, right? If they are directing it at you, then it is a request for you to do that thing. That's all that behavior ever is a request for them to get that thing. They just want somehow to communicate to you what they want in their head with their body, because they can't point to that thing. So they have to make the sounds of that thing so that you can guess what that thing is. And if that thing is a monster truck, they might make noises, or they'll make the noises or sounds, or they'll do the actions of that thing to request that thing, but it will be their own. It'll be their own try at it. It won't sound exactly like the thing as they're moving towards their own verbal speech. So that's kind of the difference. And the step is to, whenever your child does talk about those things that they love and they say those phrases, if it is in the stage of it is just like that thing, then notice it and call it out and say, you are talking about 1, 2, 3s. You are talking about numbers. I like numbers, and then talk about them in your language with your opinion, because your child is trying to share their opinion. I love the numbers. I want to see the numbers again. That's not the right numbers video. Whatever they're trying to tell you with their behavior, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like it's wrong because you keep picking the wrong video and they're crying while they're saying 1, 2, 3. And then suddenly you get the right video and they'll go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? It's a combination of the speech that they're saying and the behavior of their whole body. This is, as a parent, how you understand what the message is. It's not just about what's coming out of their mouth. What's coming out of their mouth is a speech behavior that is the same as a request, typically at the first stages with a nonverbal child, the same as the saying more, want, or please, or whatever. It's a behavior to indicate a request or to get you to guess what they want or how they're feeling. If a child's upset, they're going to show you. They're going to show you. And they want you to say, you are feeling sad. How can I help you feel better? That's what your child desperately wants when they do that. That's what they've done since birth. And when they're happy and excited about something, they want the same thing from you too. So all of this echolalic stuff, it's a very complex communication system that kids put together with these behaviors. The repetitive behaviors, the things you see your kids do a lot, is their language. And you as parents, as language facilitator parents, need to interpret what that language is and show them the right words the right way at the right time for that activity. Spoken in language facilitation talk. And if you don't know what language facilitation talk is, then go watch that video series because it is in there. So, all right. Sweet 2 is here and says, how to teach a 3-year-old with receptive language delay pronouns. Okay, I think I almost have this question every week. Sweet 2, you don't teach a child pronouns. You can't teach them to say pronouns and teach pronouns like that. You teach pronouns by demonstrating how to use them yourself. So if you want your child to use pronouns appropriately, then you have to talk about what you are doing using pronouns and what he or she is doing using pronouns. I like what you are doing. I see that you have a blue dinosaur. You are walking that dinosaur. I have a pink dinosaur. I am walking my pink dinosaur. This is the language that your child needs to hear repeatedly, slowly, in activities that they are interested in, and then your child will learn how to use pronouns. That is how you teach it. You can't teach it like flashcards. You can't memorize how to use pronouns. If you have ever learned English as a second language, you can understand that it is a process to learn how all those pronouns work. And, other languages like Spanish, you just change the verb, the whole word. You don't have to stick another him or her or it or whatever. So a lot of people who learn English as a second language mix up pronouns, and every late talker, here's a secret, newsflash everybody, every late talker uses verbal speech as their second language. Their first language is their own stuff that I told you they made up with their behaviors. All their behaviors are their communication, and verbal speech is their second language. You have to teach them verbal speech like a second language. That's how language facilitation works. The right words, the right way, at the right time. So that is how, whoops, I skipped past there. Disruptively, how to answer questions, accept yes and no, which he gets. So Sweet 2, asking questions to a 3-year-old, like your child has great receptive language because you have just been asking your child questions. And questions, if you haven't been watching before, everybody who has been watching me before, are a way of prompting children to talk. late talking children who have no expressive language or poor expressive language do not know how to understand and answer questions. All they do when you ask them questions is struggle in their heads, try to find the right word to spit out to make you stop asking them questions or give them what they want. You give them a direction to do and they follow that direction. You give them a question to answer, they spit out the word that you are looking for. That's all questions do for late talking children. So Sweetu, I am not going to tell you how to teach your child to answer questions, but what I am going to advise you to do is watch the swapping the prompting challenge and challenge yourself to stop asking your child all questions, including yes/no questions, especially yes/no questions, and start giving them statements instead. Don't ask your child question. If you walk in the room and you want to say, "What are you doing?" Try to get them to say, "I'm playing with the blue truck right now." That's not going to work. You have to walk in and give them the words expressively, because just like I told the last person, in order for your child to learn how those words are used, they have to hear you and see you doing them yourself. And if you're only asking your child questions, that's all they're hearing you say, and no language is made up of questions, questions, questions. And if your child is saying questions or imitating questions, that means you've been asking questions for long enough for your child to memorize all the questions you say. So if your child is saying, "Do you want a cookie?" when they want a cookie, it's because they have memorized that phrase, "Do you want a cookie?" is their way to get you to give them a cookie. That's all. It's not language. It is a behavior to get you to say it. It sounds complicated behavior. You know, it's as complicated as rubbing your belly and tapping your head, saying words. It's a very complicated thing you have to learn to do to understand, memorize, pull the words, spit it out. And if you are getting your kid to imitate and memorize words, you're wasting all the brain power that they could be using learning natural language and listening to you use natural talking, while you're teaching them to memorize things that are not going to serve them as functional language later. It's the long way to go about it. You can't learn language by memorizing everything. You can't. It's the long, long way. If you've ever learned English as a second language, you know how that goes. All right, Nikki says, how to just start with a normal communication for a new language facilitator. So the best place, Nikki, is to go to if you are not interested in working with me, or you want to learn more, I mean, the best way, if you want guidance all the way, you can be a language facilitator who's just learning today. Go watch this class. Anybody who's watching me now, if you haven't seen this class, you should go watch this class, because this class tells you what's going on in your house that's blocking your language facilitation efforts, and what it is to become a language facilitator mindset, to dump the fix my kid mindset, where you take your child to somebody else, or you get on a Q&A and you get some strategies and you think your child will miraculously talk without you, because it's not gonna happen. Not for any late talker. Parents are the best language facilitators, and they must take the lead, not the speech therapist. The parents have to take the lead with this language facilitation process, because children learn language best from their parents, and you are with them all day, every day. Speech therapist sees them once whenever, and they don't even know your child. You know your child, and all of this behavior that I was talking about earlier on the video, when I talk about these things, understanding your child's behaviors, this is what's necessary. This is what's necessary. So, all right, Nicole says, here she is telling me some details. We got to hear some details about Nicole. Before, he was just doing gestures and pointing, so not really using verbal speech at all. Now he is saying the alphabet and colors very well. If we go out and he sees the letters or certain colors or words, he will call them out. Very nice, on his own without prompting. Very nice. If he's watching Peppa Pig, he says Peppa. He also eats totally on his own now. Wow. And he picks up his coloring book and colors and starts coloring. So Nicole has seen changes in her child from facilitating language that aren't even involved with speech. And see, this is a really good point, because so many of the behaviors that are calling your child, or that other providers or somebody else, your aunt, uncle, lady up the street, would make them look sideways at your kiddo and think that they have some kind of permanent thing going on, that there's some massive diagnosis that you can never come back from because they display a few different behaviors. And the reason your kid's displaying those behaviors is because they're making up their own funky communication system. And all they have is what they know with their body. And they're going to do the most unique and creative things to get your attention. And if you've been reading checklists to see things in a kid, and your kid lines something up, and they hear you go, oh no, he's lining something up, he's lining something up, I wonder if that's a problem, he's lining something, like they hear you say it over and over again, guess what they're going to do? Like, they're going to think, they don't know that you think that's a bad thing. If you call attention to it over and over and over again, it's going to entice your child to do it more, potentially, because what do kids want from their parents? They want attention. So that's what you got to do. It's all about understanding that all of these behaviors your child is doing is communication. And when you shift them one by one into words, those behaviors go away. And so do potentially the diagnoses or the suspicions of them or whatever it was. Because many parents in my program were told to go get diagnoses, didn't do it because they didn't believe their child had some kind of crazy permanent neurological problem. They knew there were things going on in their household that they could do to change their situation. And they did, and their situation changed, just like Nikki. So that's what's so great, is that you understand it when your language is powerful. Verbal speech is so powerful for you and for your child. And as soon as they learn how powerful it is, then they will quit these other behaviors because it's way easier to explain what they want. But they cannot possibly explain what they want unless they have had language models for it. And the YouTube videos where they've learned and memorized all their words didn't teach them how to use those words functionally. They just watched them over and over and over and over and memorized them. And those receptive things you tested later by saying, where's the 1, where's the 2, where's the 3? And your child said, oh, mom likes these numbers too, and we play with them. But it's not facilitating language. It's just testing the things that your child has memorized before. So facilitating verbal speech for those things that they love will help them give up that repetitive stuff and talk about it like language, like people do, conversation. All right. As Santi said, hi, Marcy, my son uses gestures a lot, but no verbalization at all. He makes a lot of sounds like he is exploring the tones. That's really good. He likes music a lot, so I'm singing to him and giving him choices with nursery rhymes. Hopefully he will talk back to his twin soon. So he has a twin. And, Asanti, it's very difficult to know, again, because like you said, there's no verbalization yet. So you're at the very beginning of modeling all the language that your child needs. And it must be very simple and it must be very slow, but it can't be baby talk. It has to just be the kind of language that you speak to your other twin. Same words, but try slowing it down. And if you think you're talking slow, slow it down 3 more times and see what happens with your other twin. And maybe if your twin starts to listen to you talking more, then he will start to pay attention more, process more, and then eventually start to use words on his own. If you want to find out what's blocking you, then watch this class. And if you are interested in getting guidance through, I can tell you exactly what's going on. I've had 100% so far. Every parent that's joined my independent study program or my online program, I've been able to spot their every single time, spot their blockages. And that's why all their parents are seeing improvement. The people who I understand what those blockages are and make the changes to change it, because just knowing what's wrong isn't enough. You have to make changes. So, all right, Nicole says, he says, Granny and Uncle and Mommy, he's much more aware of his surroundings. That's great because you've been explaining about his surroundings. And he used to watch his hands a lot and flap his hands too, and that's decreasing. So once again, verbal speech is decreasing those things. He rarely does it now. He sings songs in the same tone. That's wonderful. Nicole, this is so great. all of those things that are happening because your child is learning how to use language instead of those other behaviors to communicate. And what's great with kids who start talking is that, you know, when you respond to their speech, they learn how it works fast. They learn fast because, remember, they've memorized all those words and they're really helpful and suitable and useful for them. So that's why they do it. All right, and there's Tracy. Tracy's in my program. Hi, Tracy. All right, Amina says, my baby just sung Twinkle, Twinkle Star from beginning to the end. I was so proud. Her speech is still a little struggle. So you just answered my question. My child is in preschool and was wondering why her teacher talks so slow to the kids in a toddler class, because your teacher has figured out that they're very easily distracted, right? And when teachers change their speech, like I get all animated, or I get serious, or I get quiet, it calls attention to me. And slowing your speech is always good. When you talk fast, it calls your kids' attention, you know, because it's cool, you know, like the TV does. It gets kids' attention, but they can't hear the words because they're too fast. So in language facilitation, you super slow your speech so that your kids will pay attention better, because it's different than how you usually talk. That'll catch their attention. And then you say the words for the things that they love, and that's what keeps their attention. And you can read about that whole process, by the way, everybody, in my new book, which is available as of this week. I just finished it. It's on Amazon for pre-order. You can go over there. I didn't put the link. I have to put the link in the description of this video. So, and with all of my other resources, I have my my free class and more than 200 videos on YouTube, mini courses over there, all of that stuff. And if you like it in print, the Kindle book is available for pre-order. It's going out. It'll download automatically on the 28th to your device. If you buy it now, you're going to get a discount, probably about a $5 discount on the book, and yeah, you'll be able to be among the first to literally get walked step by step. The book is called If It Isn't Fun, It Isn't Fun. Teach your child to talk faster than speech therapy, and it is on Amazon Kindle. The paperback will also be out. It's just waiting for Amazon to do the things, so you can check that out. And if you like to read. So I also do daily blog posts and stuff, but this is the program, step by step, all the way through. The book's not even very long because the program's not very complicated. It takes you step by step through the whole process. So if you are interested, head over to Amazon and check it out for pre-order. All right, and Amina says, I was told once a child turns 4 and if their speech is still a struggle, that they'll be labeled. Is that true? Well, I'm not sure what you're asking, what kind of label you're talking about. Any child who is not talking at 4 years old will probably be diagnosed or labeled as a reason to guide their services. So most services provided to limited verbal children who are 4 years old, including speech therapy and other kinds of therapies, parents usually seek to have those things reimbursed. If you want to have those services reimbursed by an insurance or Medicaid or some kind of a scholarship fund, or even the school apply for GET services, early intervention services, then they usually are required to have some kind of diagnosis. In fact, you may even be told to go and tell a provider that you want them to give your child that diagnosis so that you can get those therapies. And parents do what they got to do. If that therapy that is presented to you you believe is so beneficial, will be so ultimately perfectly beneficial to your child to get them to the place that you want them to get, not the place that we think your child should do this therapy because they have a diagnosis, or because we think they need it, or because it is for every children who have that diagnosis, or because of what anybody else thinks. Any provider, doctor, therapist, me, anybody who gives you advice about what you should do to help your child, you should view that person as a consultant, because you are the boss of your child's development as their parent. I assume most parents who are watching this video want to accept that responsibility. And that's what I talk about in my class, about changing your mindset from being a fix my kid parent, where you find the best professional to fix your kid for you somehow. And when you give up that mindset, every single person you talk to, you use them as a resource to help you. So if you are going to send your child to a school, a therapy, you're going to give them a medication, you're going to give them, like if you're going to give your child a medication, you would say to the doctor, what is this going to do to my child? If you don't ask that question, you should. Because before you give that medication to your child, or you allow it to be given to your child, you as a parent have the responsibility to know what it's going to do, because you know your child. And you have to ask those questions. You have to. So the idea of getting a diagnosis at some point happens when parents ask questions of doctors. And if you ask, what is wrong with my child? If that is the question that you ask, then you will get an answer that has a diagnosis in it. Your child is not talking because they have diagnosis. Because people who are in the business, doctors, therapists, anybody, ABA providers, schools, who are in the business of labeling children to put them into services, will necessarily give you a label. It's up to you to decide whether you accept that label as a condition of receiving the services. So sometimes people get labels and they don't believe it, but they really like the therapy and they decide that they want to do it. And that's the other thing that you have to think about that therapy. Just to get the label, if they say you can get some therapy, a lot of therapy, these therapies, that therapies, if you get the label, is backwards of how parents should be doing this. You should be asking that provider, what does this therapy do to fix what you see as in your evaluation of my child? You know, if they're looking at blood tests or weight, whatever they're looking at, whatever they're evaluating, they come up with some label, and the next question should be, how do I fix this? And if they say, go to speech therapy, general something, that's not a good enough answer, because every speech therapy is not the same and every child is not the same. So diagnosis therapy, here you go, does not work for every single child. Because if that person that you're there is in the business of selling that therapy, so for example, you go to an ABA center, where on the door it says we are an ABA center, and we conveniently have diagnosticians here in our premises who can evaluate your child and give you a label. In 9 out of 10, I'm saying 9 out of 10 because it's probably 10 out of 10, but I'm guessing because I don't know how these places go, but every parent who talks to me who goes through those experiences, they tell me that their children are always given an autism label and then invited to enroll in the services in the building. In fact, escorted from the diagnostic appointment to the place to schedule their first appointment for therapy. And so the process of the evaluation, the figure it out, the label, is merely a process to get you into the therapy, because that person is biased towards, their job is to work the system so that you can get paid or use your insurance or whatever for that thing. And if that's happening to you, then you should, if that has been your experience, or that is your experience, or if you find yourself sitting in an office and that happens to you, my recommendation is you need to start asking more questions about, how will this therapy solve this problem that I brought you to? Because if you took your child to the doctor because they were late talking, you want to know, why is my child late talking? And if they say it's a general diagnosis, it's not enough, because autism is a spectrum disorder. You have a mild thing, you have even apraxia, even speech delay is a spectrum disorder. They're all spectrum disorders because it's a label. Because nobody can put a label on your child except for your child's name. Because your child only looks like your child. Their communication behaviors, that's all they have. That's what they use. So that's why labels help families who want to get in some kind of therapy. So on the flip side, there are some wonderful schools that are available for children who have speech delays and a lot of other delays, anxiety, all kinds of things that are not ABA centers, and they still do require a child to have a diagnosis. But the thing is, those are schools for children who absolutely cannot function in a public school. The children who are biting, kicking, fighting, the children who cannot thrive in a public school at all, with accommodations, right? And those children always get diagnoses because there is something going on with them that is not just habitual things that are going on, or a period of history, or bad habits, or their kids are memorizing words. Because remember, late talkers use all kinds of behavior. Those behaviors, if your child remains nonverbal after 4 years old, you have to find out why. You have to find out why your child has stuck with these nonverbal communication patterns. And if it is something physiologically wrong with your child's neurology, their physiology, if they got toxed, if they got diet, if they got whatever, you have to figure out what that is. So if your child is nonverbal after 4, should they get labeled with something? Yes, but it's not autism. It's leaky gut or neurological problem or something like that, because that's the problem that you have to physiologically address to help your child feel better. And that's kind of how it goes. It's sort of the long way. This is sort of a ramble today on my Q&A. I don't see any more questions popping in. So there's Trisha and Dawn and Esther, and thank you so much to everybody who's watched today. I do these live Q&As for every Thursday at 2 p.m. so that families can join on, ask questions, listen to me ramble on and talk about language facilitation and how it is to be a language facilitator mom. I think in my lifetime program, because I train everybody in the first part, the starter program trains you to be a language facilitator. The lifetime program supports you in the ongoing journey. So if you just want training to figure it out, then the starter program can be great for you, because it really does get parents making the shift. I identify what's going on. But the lifetime program, I should say, and the lifetime program is super beneficial for families, because what I'm finding myself coaching in there is similar to what I do on these Q&As, where we talk about what happens in real life to these parents, because they have late talking kids who are now talking, but speech and language development is a lifelong process. And if your child is 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 12 even, and they're not using verbal speech and they meet the criteria for talking, and you really want to give it a go, then you need to figure out how to make baby steps in a long journey, in a lifetime journey. And that's why the lifetime program is helpful, because the other thing that's happening is parents are getting their kids talking, and their current schools are not functioning for them anymore. They don't need the level of help that they used to. They're dropping ABA. Everybody's dropping ABA like flies, because they are swapping it out for natural language opportunities in their neighborhood. I have one mom who quit speech therapy so that they could spend the same money once a week going to a neighborhood hotel and swimming and staying overnight on Friday nights. They saved that much money from their speech therapy, and their kid got to swim every day. They got to eat out in a restaurant, and they got to have a little mini vacay away from home with their speech therapy money, and their kiddo is talking like crazy. because once it starts language, it's like a snowball. Once you teach your kids how to learn verbal, natural, spoken language from you, it never stops. And the Lifetime program helps parents get through every stage of the situation. So Amina says, you've answered my questions. Really, thank you. You're so welcome, and thank you for saying thank you. And Erica, thank you for joining, and thanks for saying thank you. And Nicole and Dawn shared it with Karen. Hey, thanks for sharing, Dawn. And Sabura says, my daughter's 2 years, 9 months old and still babbling. It's okay if she's still babbling. Could just continue to language facilitation. Babbling is a normal way to go. Some kids get talking later. Just make sure you're not prompting, okay? If your child is trying to use words, then they are taking their own little baby steps towards spoken language. Encourage them. Every time they try to say something, you kind of know what they say. So if your child goes ba 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 ga, and they're talking about Peppa Pig, you're just like, yeah, you are. That's right. It is Peppa Pig. Isn't she cute today? Look at her dress, right? Just talk with your child. And if it seems like they're not, catching on, check hearing, make sure that your child is listening to you, and slow down your speech. And then your child will be able to hear you and catch things on, okay? Did have a hearing test at 2 years old, good. Passed with flying colors. Kids have to be able to hear well, at least 30 dB, at least 30 decibels is speech. My speech is louder than that, but most speech is about 30 decibels, and kids have to be able to pay attention to the person talking, because they could have great hearing, but they could be living in their own world and not used to listening to people. And you have to figure that out too. So pass the hearing test. Gonna have another one before the year's over. They say complete sentences. She's saying complete sentences with certain things, but not like she should, from 1 to 10. I'll give my baby a 4, and that's bad. So she should not talk about, you give her a 4. So I think a 4 is great, because if you don't have any language and then you have some language, that is a 10. Every language your child produces is a 10, and you need to consider it that, because if you gauge your child's speech, any try at speech, if you gauge it at less than a 10, your child thinks they're not good enough. Right? And if a child repeatedly hears, well, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's a 4, and maybe you're not even saying it to them, but you're thinking it in your head. You wrote it down even. That puts that out into the universe, that my child's only using a 4 level language. And that's totally not true, because every child's try is a 10. Every child's try is a 10. And you need to celebrate it like they just graduated from Harvard, because they need to see your encouragement. They need to see your excitement. And if the speech isn't perfect, you say, your kid knows. They know their speech isn't perfect. You say, I know you're trying. I know you're doing this. I know you're giving effort towards it. And I want to help you. Because that's what you are as language facilitator parents. You are helping your child teach transfer all these behaviors that they're using. I can't even say it. Transmute all their behaviors that they are using, their spoken words, their facial expressions, their dragging you around, their pantomime, their dancing, all that stuff is their language. Language facilitation, you translate that language into the spoken language that you're teaching your child. If you're watching me and English is your second language, your first language might be, something else, and you're speaking that. That's okay. That's okay. You teach your child the language you want them to learn, because you are the language facilitators, and that's how it's going. All right, last question. Let's see. Dahlia says, when will your book be released? Dahlia, the pre-order for the Kindle book on Amazon is live. If it's not live right now, it's because I had to go in and change something. But the actual release date is September 28th. And the price is going to go up after release. So right now it's only $9.99 to get the Kindle book. It literally tells the whole process if you have access to Kindle. The paperback, if you don't have access to Kindle where you live, some countries don't, the paperback is going out. It's already in the Amazon process. So that's what's going on. primitive reflex is causing issues. Dawn, I know that that is a whole theory of study that I have not been trained in. So for me, my methods are revolving natural experiential language learning, like foreign language learning. And if you believe your practitioner is telling you that reflexes are blocking your child's communication, then the answer is, how do we correct that problem? So because there are many practitioners who have lots of theories about why kids are late talking physiologically in their body, biomedical, stem cells, TDCS, all those things, and they may help your child, but it's your job to figure out if it's the right thing, if it's the right match for you. So, excuse me, sorry. I guess it's almost time to get off here. I've been talking. All right, let's see. So that's my kind of thought on primitive reflexes. I don't have a lot of feedback on that because it's not something I am very skilled in. I've heard parents talk about it though, and yeah, unfortunately can't help. So Nicole says, celebrate everything. Yep, it encourages them. Hey, and there's Ella. Hi, Ella. Thanks for joining me on my video today. So today I think I'm going to get off of here. I've been on now for nearly an hour. I usually do this live Q&A for about an hour. And the replay will be up on YouTube. So I'm going to leave you with just a couple jobs. If this is the first time you've watched me, you definitely want to check out the free class at wavesofcommunication.com. If you are a reader, go to Amazon and search for If It Isn't Fun, It Isn't Fun. Teach your child to talk faster than speech therapy, or you can search on them for my name, Marcy Melzer, and you'll pull up my author page. It's a little kind of crazy to believe that I'm actually an author. And yeah, it kind of made me cry a little bit thinking about that because it was a hard job to put this book together, and it is available for you now. So go over to Amazon and pre-order your copy now so you can save money on it. And if you are interested in working with me, there is my website, wavesofcommunication.com, a page that has all the program details so you can learn which program would be available or the right match for you. I'm a consultant, so the parents choose their consulting programs based on their level of need of education and support. If you are already a rockstar language facilitator mom, my independent study course may be the perfect thing for you to slide right through the whole process. Maybe even the book will help you get it done. If you feel like you need help with analyzing your situation, if you feel like you're stuck in a lot of habits that or you just don't even know where to start, then maybe the starter program is for you to figure things out. And you feel like once you get a little training, you can go on and do things on your own. That's a good way to go. If you really want process the whole time, maybe you have an older late talker and you've been at this for a long time and you're exhausted and you need step-by-step guidance, like, look, just give me the first thing to do so that I know what my next baby step is. Then the lifetime program is for you, because I'll take you every step all the way through the process, however long it takes, because we always in language facilitation let the children's language emerge developmentally when they're ready to do their own thing. So, all right. Okay. Yep, that's it for today. Thank you again so much for joining me today. Take advantage of my free resources. I didn't talk about YouTube, but the link is in the description. You can get over there and see everything. And I will see you all next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on my Facebook page for live Q&A. And in the meantime, get at it. The right words, the right way, the right time. And if it isn't fun, capital F-U-N, it capital isn't fun. And it's not fun for your child, and it's not fun for you. And things that aren't fun doesn't help develop language. So get out there and have some fun with your kids this weekend. Enjoy the fall emerging weather, facilitate some language, and I will see you all on my next video.